Turn with me to James chapter 3. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large, they are driven by strong winds. They are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth comes praises and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. I grew up hunting on a ranch just outside of Colorado Springs. And there is something so special about your childhood hunting spot. The place you grew up hunting. I mean, every meadow, every spot, every place on that ranch had a story of animals we had seen, animals we had harvested. I thought about including a grip and grin, but I didn't want to startleize anyone this week. And all these memories that had happened, I could almost go around the place blindfolded because I knew every rock, every hill, every meadow, every bend in the trail and the road as we would go through this place. I thought we would always have this special place to go to hunt forever. And it turns out it was a naive thought. It was a naive thought because on June 23rd in 2012, what would be known as the Waldo Canyon Fire broke out. The rapid fire ripped down all the valleys through the whole course of the ranch, which I grew up hunting. We couldn't get a hold of my dad for a few hours. We were frantically trying to talk to him. Turns out he was at the old ranch owner's house, begging him to flee, to not go down with the ranch that was burning. Embers were blowing from this ranch over my parents' neighborhood, popping up in spot fires surrounding my childhood home. When the fire was finally contained, about 18,000 acres were destroyed, 347 homes, and 2 lives were taken. We knew many of the people that lived in those houses. It was a hot fire that moved quickly, that was completely destructive over the west end of the city in my childhood hunting spot. Over 10 years later, the place is just starting to recover from this horrible, devastating fire. And that kind of fire is what James talks about in James chapter 3. It is what James goes on to describe as the destructive power of our tongues. We all know the lie. Say it with me. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. What an untrue statement. We all know it's a lie. We know that some of the most painful experiences we've ever had in our lives are from things other people have said to us, especially trusted, loved people who have said hurtful things. So this is the second time James brings up the power of the tongue, and it won't be his last time, because the tongue has the power to completely destroy, and it has the power to build up.
So we'll talk about this more as we go on. But before we get into James chapter 3, we have to celebrate for a minute. As Jim was alluding to earlier, we had VBS last week. And those of you who have looked in the bulletin can see that we had 94 kids from the community at our VBS this past week. That does not include Edmond coming and helping and what was going on with all of them. That is just kids from our community. It is my understanding that this is the largest or close to the largest VBS we have ever had at this church. And here is what I want you to hear most of all. These were not strangers. These were not strangers that came last week. Most of the kids that came, we had the majority of the kids in our church represented in coming to this, but more than that, those of you who attended date nights, you've helped with date nights, you would have recognized about half of the kids coming. Because about half those kids were kids who families we have reached out through date night and coming through those various events. There were some strangers, there were some people new to the community, some people we hadn't met before. I would guess that was maybe about 25%. But the rest of them were people we knew in town. Specifically Aubrey and I, that we had seen at drop off with the kids, that we've interacted with through coaching or different kids events or community events. We knew these people. And some of them are very committed to some local churches in our community, and they sent their kids, and that's great. We're happy for them. And others are so-so on church attendance, or they maybe don't go at all. So here is where I need your prayers, and here is where I need your help. That we would be working to continue to build these relationships with these 94 kids and these families represented, so we can invite them to share with them the good news of Jesus. I think it's the best thing we could offer them. I think the best thing we could ever give them is these families the good news of Jesus. So be praying for us that God would work as we seek to do this, and also work with me as we seek to build these relationships that hopefully involves them coming to know Jesus. But I need to tell you about something else going on that while many of us knew about VBS, you might not have known about this. Hudson was at a leadership camp this week called Crossways. Come on up, Hudson. So Hudson and I are going to talk about it a little bit. Let me set this up for you. About 10 years or so ago, a guy named Jeff Walling was like, we are going to start a leadership camp at Pepperdine's campus that will be 1 week every single year out there. Now, Jeff Walling's name may not mean a lot to you, but Jeff Walling preaches every year at what's called Winterfest. There's 2 locations. There's one in Dallas. That's the one I attended as a kid. About 5,000 Church of Christ kids attend that conference every year. And then the bigger one is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And there is anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 kids at that conference. And so Jeff Walling is the preacher for that. But most notably, Jeff Walling preached the eulogy for Brian's mom's funeral. So that's our cool connection in all this. So normally what has to happen is you have to go through an extensive application process that I've sent about a dozen or so students through. So they have to write 2 essays. They have to get recommendations from the ministers and the elders at church, recommendation letters. Then we have to come back and we have to verify, and we have to fill out these surveys about the students and that sort of thing. And the group who leads worship for this event is One by One. One by One should stand out to you because that's the group who came to Picnic in the Park last year. So I'm at NCYM, the Conference for Youth Ministers in the Springs last year, and I'm talking to the organizer of One by One, and I'm saying, hey, are we going to be able to have you guys out this summer? And she's like, no, we're going north instead of east. It's not going to work. But hey, just sign up for our drawing. So I sign up. We're sitting there and not thinking anything, and they're like, Tyler Goodo, in front of everyone, you have won a prize. You get to pick, or you get to have one student from your church go to Crossways, no expenses, completely paid for them to go to Crossways. They don't have to do the application process. So here's the requirements. You have to be finishing your sophomore or your junior year, this entire thing. So we had 2 choices. We had Ryan and we had Hudson. Ryan already had a trip planned to Hawaii. So it's like, Hudson, do you want to go? And Hudson was brave enough to go on this trip to fly out there by himself and experience it. I'm just going to ask him a few questions about it, and we're going to hear from him. So first off, what were most of the days like?
So the first few days were just like getting to like know the campus, and we were in small groups of like 12 people. So like getting to know our group basically. But then when we started the week on Monday, we woke up at like 7, had breakfast, and then like at 8:30 we had this like morning worship where we all gather at this amphitheater. And so there was cohort leaders, right? But then there was these 2 cohort mentors that were there that went to Crossways in the past. And they were the leaders of this, and we played fun games and like basically woke everyone up, and we sung some songs, and it was pretty fun. After that, we had core classes, which we had 4 different core classes. We learned about the New Testament, Old Testament, Jesus, why he was a leader, and being a leadership through church. They basically did that to like show what it's like in college, like classes basically. And then after that, we had 3 different elective classes through the week. You could take any one you want. There was like a variety to pick from. I chose to take 2 leadership ones that were preaching, speaking in front of people basically. And then I took one about being better at like writing my college applications basically. So I could be better at that. But then after that, I had lunch. After lunch, let me see, after lunch, we had our cohort groups, and we did a life map. And basically, we did that all the days, and we did like 3 hours of that. And it was pretty long and tiring. As you can see, that's the life map up there.
Yeah, go ahead, we're going to ask about it, so go ahead and tell us about it while we're here.
Okay, so the life map, it's basically just like what like the next 20, 50 years are going to look like, and like what you want your whole life to be, and like the destination is when you die, and then I'll start over here. So before we went to Crossways, we took like a strengths finder test, and once we were done with the test, it gave us 5 different strengths that we were like really good at. I had consistency, restorative, adaptability, or anger, and positivity. And with that, we're supposed to write I'm gifted speech, and so I said I'm gifted by God to help myself adapt and have a structure in life and give positivity to others. Next, there's this little road. On that road, we were supposed to write like important parts of my life, like important events basically. So first I had like started wrestling, and the group with that, like Sam, Cal, all of them. Then I have Tyler. The stick figures aren't that best, but then I have someone else. Then I had Joey
Kim will
as
forgive
well.
you.
And then I have starting to go to this church right here. And then last I had my dad leaving because it helped me a lot and helped me like learn how to be like independent basically. And then next we were supposed to find a quote from the Bible. I chose Matthew 5:3-10. Has such a strong impact on me and how I am blessed. Next. So over here, this is the earth, and it's basically holes in the earth. So I said like comparison, selfishness, judgment, security, and outside is like positive things about the earth, like love, community, joy, and peace. And then up here, so on the outside of the compass, there's soul, heart, strength, and mind. And basically, like soul is basically which ways differently you see God, like through nature. Like heart is through like other people, communicating with other people. Strength is like physically going to do stuff like mission trips, stuff like that. And then mind is like reading like text through the Bible and like understanding it. And then strength is underlined because that's like what I need to work on more. And soul, I circled it because that's the one I'm most like best with it. Because we live in the mountains, so I go hiking and I do a lot of fun stuff outside. Next, I have this road. So on the bridge, I don't know if you can see it, but we were supposed to write like 3 things we're passionate about, like leadership, coaching, and training. Those are the main ones I picked. I said I cannot see that. I'm passionate about leadership because it helps, like I can help selfish people break their like ways of being selfish by like communicating with them, being like, hey. And then another one I said was I'm passionate about training because I can meet a lot of new people and stop judgment through that by being like, hey, it's okay if you don't need to lift that heavy and stuff like that. Oh, I forgot to go up here. So basically, it's like you're telling what God is, and there's like a lot to say, and we were pretty rushed. We only got like 5 minutes to say that, but I said God is my strength and my weakness, and looks past my flaws. And then I wanted to add, he loves me no matter what. And then, on the river, those are like distractions. So I said like hang out with the wrong people, trying to be a people pleaser, and social media. Next. Okay, so these mountains represent like me in 5 years, me in 10 years, me in 20 years, me in 40 years. Like stuff. I'm gonna like basically when I'm in college, I want to be balanced. So I want to be like serving the community, working, and school, having that all balanced together, while figuring out my future. And then orderly I chose because I want to be traveling while working and maintaining a steady life. And then up here I said hardworking. So I'm committed to a job, and I have a structured schedule. And then I just said well-rounded because that's when I'm like 56. I just want to have a great life, great family, and structured job. Next. Okay, so then up here is, the path, the road. Mentors. I'm sorry. So mentors are in the trees. So, I can't remember reading that, but, so I have Bob Marley, I have one of my cohort leaders, then I have Tyler, I have Jody, and then I have Michael McGovern, he's my boss. And then on the road, it's like things I want to do throughout my life. Like I want to be able to continue with sports. I want to be serving my free time. I want to be able to like start a business, which would be really cool for me. I want to find like a close church where I remember living. I want to be thriving and dream house basically. And then final destination is when I die. So we're supposed to write like basically what they say at funerals, be like, so this is mine. Hudson Fisher died at age 85 years with a wife of 50 years and 3 loving children and 2 grandchildren. Hudson was a professional athlete that started a new business with affordable clothes. Hudson was great at individually understanding people and being there for them. He gave his life to God by showing that through his business. And basically that's my whole life map. Yeah. Any questions?
Okay, so tell us real quick, where were some of these students from? Did you make any friends with any of them?
Yeah, I made friends with everyone. Like there was 100 different people, and it was all around the country. And there was someone from Mexico actually, this girl from Mexico. So it's pretty cool, and it's just everyone was just so amazing. Like you could tell anyone anything, and they'd like be there for you no matter what. But it was just crazy how much like we got together like so close over just a week, and like at the end we were just all so upset leaving. Like it was just like our big group. Like yeah.
He had a good time. There were lots of posts on Instagram, and we've had many texts, including at like 10:30 last night, planning this. So where do you go from here? Last question.
Where do I go from here?
Where do you think you learn from this? Where do you take away? Where do you go?
I think I just have to tell other people about like how this has changed me, and like inviting other people to this, basically telling them about God.
Awesome. Man, that's great. Yeah. Well, let's give Hudson a round of applause. That's awesome. Join me in prayer. God, we thank you so much for Hudson. We thank you for his heart. We thank you for what you've been doing in his life this week, for glimpses of the kingdom that you've shown him, for the development of leadership you've sparked in his heart. And so I just pray that we would fan that flame, that he would continue to grow and learn and follow you all the days of his life in his spiritual journey, God. God, it was so great to witness faith in action this week at VBS. as we seek to build relationships, as we seek to invite these families in our community to share in your good news, God, we ask for your Spirit most of all. Your Spirit to work, to bless us, to multiply this endeavor, to give us guidance and wisdom as we seek to love our neighbors around us. So as we learn from your brother James, may your Holy Scripture give us the ability to have faith that works. Thank you, God, so much for Edmond this week. Thank you for their heart, for our community, for their hard work, for the faith in action that they displayed for us last week. This morning, may we hear your words afresh to see your kingdom clearly. Pour through me the gift of preaching, that Christ may be formed in hearts. It's in your name that I pray. Amen. So James starts off his lesson on the power of the tongue with this terrifying moment, this verse that actually, if I'm honest, has pushed me away from ministry for a long time because it's terrifying. Those who teach understand the great pressure of teaching. Okay? Teaching and preaching is not just public speaking, but public speaking is bad enough. There was a survey once that asked people, what are you most afraid of? The first was public speaking. The second was death. Okay? So it means they're more afraid to do the eulogy at their funeral than be the one being in the casket, right? So public speaking is terrifying enough. But beyond that, you have the weight of these holy scriptures that you are to teach on. The greatest pressure of teaching God's words is honoring this. I mean, how do you honor it? Every week I'm just like, I couldn't do it justice enough. Couldn't do it enough justice. So let me give you a little context here. I think it helps fill in what James is getting at. See, teachers played a prominent role in the early church. Paul singles them out as one of the three prominent roles along with apostles and prophets. They're somewhat the teachers comparable with the Jewish rabbi. The teachers in the early church were entrusted with the crucial task of communicating the doctrine that bound this community together. And naturally, a certain prestige would develop from this teaching ministry, particularly because they were one of the few in their churches who would have been literate. They were often the smartest person in the room, and they held the power of teaching the scriptures. And James knows this is an attractive position. And someone could be tempted to take this and drawn to this position for the wrong reasons. So this is why James gives such strong advice. He does this because his brother Jesus gives the same warning. In Luke 10, Jesus says, "To whom much is given, much will be demanded." And so I know I'm going to have to face more judgment. It's one of the hard downsides of committing to ministry. And so this is why I try to side with James. So what does James show us to do over and over again in his book? Show mercy to people, care for orphans and widows, love your neighbor. You wonder why I talk about those things so much? Because I'm trying to be faithful to the one that says, hey, you're going to be judged more harshly. I'm trying to align with what he teaches us to do. Because I know I will face more judgment in my life. But this paragraph contrasts and ends with how we all stumble in many ways. James is taking it from the teacher and he's bringing it to all of us. He calls us to strive towards perfection, to try to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. And how is one perfect? Well, according to James, when one keeps their whole body in check. And all of this is a setup for a conversation on the tongue. Because if we're honest, the tongue is the hardest part of our body to control. And so James goes on to compare it to a bit for a horse or a rudder for a ship. And this is a calculated comparison because it was a common analogy in James's day, most notably Philo. The Hellenistic Jewish philosopher made very similar comparisons to the bit in the ship in some of his writings. So James is using cultural references to make his point. Our tongue, he says, makes great boasts. James is saying, in other words, your tongue makes your reputation. How you speak, how you talk, how you interact with people makes the reputation that you will be known for. It guides you, it steers your course, it sets your direction, and it can do so in a positive way, and it can do so in a negative way. One can view you as a kind, loving, caring person, full of compliments if you have a kind tongue, or a negative, angry, judgmental person full of bitterness because of what comes out of your mouth. The tongue steers us in those directions. So like a wildfire, it only takes a spark. It takes a spark. One negative word can distort so much trust, so much love, so much friendship. In Proverbs, it says, the speech of a fool is actually compared to a scorching fire. That's the power the tongue has. James uses such strong language to describe the power of the tongue. James says the tongue can set the whole body on fire and send it to hell. The words here cannot be underestimated because the word in the Greek here is gehenna. Gehenna, that is, which is used only 2 other times in the entire New Testament. And Jesus uses them both times. Once in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says if you're angry towards your brothers and sisters, it pushes you to hell. And that's in Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. The other is in Mark 9, verse 42. When Jesus says it is better to go to the judgment day without an eye than to go to hell or to go to judgment day as a sinner. And it's interesting because I've heard a lot of sermons in my life about sins, right? Sermons about what we deem to be the big sins. Usually we talk about, sexual immorality, murder, cheering for the Raiders, or whatever big sins we like to come up with. But if we're honest, we know the power of the tongue we often see as the permissible sin. You might gossip about someone at church. You might try to manipulate things to get their way or pass along a rumor or slander a person. And it can all be held under this kind spiritual masad. We say things like, well, I just need you to know this information, or this is what's best for the church, or I'm just trying to protect this person or the situation or the church in some way. In the South, the way they say it is bless their heart. They say, bless their heart, and then right after that comes whatever gossip, rumors, or slanders is going to come in. And when we do this, we are actually in danger of maybe the greatest sin that can condemn us to hell. So if those images weren't enough, James is just going to keep piling on through this whole section. James talks about and gives us an image of the zoo. Now, my kids love the zoo. This is a picture from the zoo on Friday, and it's amazing. It's amazing all the animals we've domesticated, all the animals that we can train. What's really cool to me is how we have endangered species in zoos that have breeding populations. They're sustaining through the zoo system that we have. That's pretty cool. But however, James compares the tongue to the worst of all biblical creatures, the snake. In Psalms 140, verse 3, evil people are said to make their tongues sharp as serpents. The poison of vipers is on their lips. The deadly poison of the viper's smooth words are what changed the course of humanity for evil at the beginning of the world. And can't we see how the tongue works to create evil in the world today? I mean, just watch 24-hour news for a few minutes and you can experience it. The way the media talks about people is so hateful. It's so hateful all the time. And you know why? Because here's the deal. If you can take away one's humanity, if you can slander them, if you can put them down enough, then you can take away their opinions, their values, and their image bearer as a child or as a person made in the image of God. In fact, it's gotten so bad in our society right now, we've developed a new term recently for this. Hate speech is what we call it. And there are people that study hate speech around the world and in our country where we have these moments where we speak so hatefully, and they track how it polarizes people, how it empowers people to act in violent ways towards their fellow human. Yes, I think the evil serpent is still working in our world today. So James ends his entire thought with this one last comparison. James says that's that same tongue that you worship God with, you use to curse human beings made in God's likeness. The irony of where we sit as humans is that the same mouth that is capable of giving God so much praise and so much glory, out of that same mouth can come some of the most evil, senile curses towards humans. So James's final comparison is to go through this list of all these unnatural things. Fruit growing on the wrong kind of trees, in a spring producing fresh water and salt water at the same time. James's audience would have been very familiar of such kind of springs, that one day would get fresh water and the next day they would get bitter, brackish water that they could no longer drink. And they considered these springs unreliable. They would love to plant a village or a town around such spring, but they couldn't depend on it, so there's no way they could do it. And James is saying the same thing about double-tongued Christians. He's saying they don't produce living water, that they're unreliable, that they should not be trusted because of their double tongues. So pretty hard words from James. How do we move forward from this text? What do we learn? What do we take away from this? I think one of the greatest signs of the health of a church is how the church communicates. And I think sometimes when we hear a text like this, one of the things is to just, I'm not going to say anything at all because I'm fearing of judgment of the gates of hell. And maybe that's a good thing to think before we speak sometimes. But then what's the temptation? Oh, I'm never going to say anything. So we never say anything. We just sweep stuff under the rug, right? And eventually it gets to a boiling point and things overflow. So instead, I think James is giving us other options. Remember, James is the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. James is thinking of example in Proverbs of how we are to control our tongues. So here's a few examples I'll give you. Babbling. When a church or a Christian is idle, it's generally not a good thing. They're not living on mission, and it's easy to start babbling. Maybe you've had this where the conversation is drug out. You don't really have much more to talk about. We're bored. We can't think of anything else to say, so we just start babbling things that aren't really that helpful. But think about the positive end of this. If we're busy caring about orphans and widows, if we're loving our neighbors and we're focused on those things, we don't have time for babbling. We're living on mission. We're focused on what God called us, and the babbling is no longer much of a temptation. We don't have that time to sit around and just talk. The next to think about is gossip. Churches are full of very broken people. It can be a great place to have some sources of gossip. But we know that there are ways to support our brothers and sisters, and there are ways to talk about them that are empowering, and there are ways to talk about them that are demeaning. When we are helping people, we can talk about them in a way that still gives them dignity and worth and value and doesn't demean them, even if they might have some flaws in their life. And I got to compliment this church. There are some of you that are phenomenal at this gift. And I learn from you and how you handle that. That there are difficult situations, and you know when to just say nothing. And you know the most kind and caring ways to show someone that you love and care for them, even though they have some maybe pretty big character flaws or issues going on in their life. But here's what it all comes down to. Our emotions and our motivations. The way we express ourselves often shows if we are about spreading rumors and gossiping, or if we're genuine and trying to love and care and help people. See, we can have really, really hard conversations and have positive emotions while we have those hard conversations, and nothing bad comes from them. On the other end, inversely, we can have really easy conversations and we can have negative emotions while we're talking about something easy, and it can damage relationships. And so we control our emotions. We work on our emotions as we're having conversations and communicating with people. But a lot of it comes down to our motivations. What are we trying to get? What do we want in those relationships, in those conversations? When we have a negative thought about someone or something and we have to make a decision, the decision is, what should I say? Should I say anything at all? How should it come out? What should I articulate? In those moments, we have to ask ourselves, what do I gain by sharing this? Because sometimes the answer is you're not going to gain anything by sharing it, so maybe you shouldn't share it. Or the other question is, what is this other person that I'm communicating with, what do they have to gain or lose by me sharing this information? When we're tempted to brag about ourselves or boast about ourselves, we have to ask ourselves, do we feel valued? Or is there something inside of us that doesn't feel very valued? That's why we have this need to boost our self-esteem and our ego like we've achieved something. Or another good question to ask, what about when we don't get our way? When a decision goes differently, when we didn't like the song that was selected that Sunday or whatever it might be? Do we need to manipulate to get what we want? Or can we have a conversation in a helpful, beneficial way? I think this is so helpful to sit back and to consider our motivations and wonder why we want whatever we might want. And why getting our outcome is better than the other person's outcome. Are we being selfish in trying to get our desires? Or are we doing this with the purest of intentions? So let me end all of this by coming back to the metaphor of a forest fire. For hundreds of years, or about 100 years or so, we thought forest fires were horrible things. We did our best to suppress them. And over the course of seeing the impacts of different kinds of fires, we came to understand that some types of fires were actually really beneficial. They clear out all the old dead trees and vegetation. They provide all this habitat, producing critical vegetation for wildfires. These smaller, less hot fires are in fact very beneficial, as opposed to the hot, raging fires of the devastating Waldo Canyon fire I told you about. See, every elk hunter knows that the best place to hunt is where one of these good wildfires happen. There's a hot tip for you today. And I call these fires refiners' fires. The Bible often refers to the process of growing and shaping us as the refiner's fire. Consider this. Didn't the church start in Acts because of tongues of fire? The same tongue that can condemn us to hell is the same tongue which founded the church. These words started a healthy fire. Their burning tongues fan the flame of the refiner's fire. They give us a healthy example of how to use our tongues in a positive way, to use our tongues to serve God. So James is not offering here this view that says everything is going to hell in a handbasket and just give up. It can sound kind of harsh like that. But instead, James offers us a realistic observation of the human tongue, of how uncontrolled what it can do. Mistakes in seeing our tongue clearly allows us to view ourselves clearly and to seek a better way. Our words often show who we are for and who we are against. So as Christians, we must praise God and not curse our neighbor with the same tongue. Because here's the deal. In my life, it's pretty easy to think of some examples where the things people said to me made all the difference. I can think of many, many people with these kind, empowering, encouraging words saying, Tyler, you are called to go into ministry, go into ministry. And if it wasn't for their encouragement, I never would have had the courage to stand before you today. But I'm guessing that's probably true in your life as well. Think about that this week. Consider it today as you go about your business. Think about the trusted people in your life, maybe family, friends, mentors, who at just the right time had just the right encouragement or advice to give you to positively help you through those difficult times in life. See, the temptation in our society is really easy. The temptation is to tear down, to lead with the negative, to be pessimistic with our tongues. But here's what I wonder. How can we build up with our tongues? How can we praise people? How can we love people? How can we honor God? How can we build our community? How can we love our neighbors with our tongues? So in conclusion, some scholars say that this passage of James that we read today cites the Old Testament more than any other passage in the book of James. So this might be a very old lesson, in fact, this one I'm teaching today. An old lesson, but a relevant lesson. So may we go out this week with the refiner's fire instead of the fire of devastation.